people who are religious live longer and healthier lives. And it seems to me, on its face, perhaps to you as well, that makes some sense. I mean, people who do have a firm belief system and don't worry about a whole lot of things are healthier. We've seen this in all the mind-body sorts of...
For myself, I would rather live a little bit less long and know the truth about why I live, rather than live a few... Probably isn't very much longer, actually. Let's be very cautious.
Suppose it was.
Humans, like any other species of animal, have been programmed, have evolved by genetic selection, and we have the bodies and the brains that are good for passing on our genes. That's step one. So that's where we get our brains from. That's why they're big. But once you get a big brain, then the big brain can be used for other things, in the same sort of way as computers were originally designed as calculating machines, and then without any change, without any alteration in their general structure, it turns out that they can be used as word processors as well. So there's something about human brains which makes them more versatile than they were originally intended for. Now, you talked about the fact that I'm passionate about what I do and that I work hard at writing my books and so on. Now, the way I would interpret that as a Darwinian is to say, certainly, writing books doesn't increase your Darwinian fitness. Writing books, there are no genes for writing books, and certainly I don't pass on any of my genes as a consequence of writing books. But there are mechanisms such as persistence, perseverance, setting up goals which you then work hard to achieve, driving yourself to achieve those goals by whatever means are available.
And you believe that is in our genetic makeup?
That's what I believe in our genetic makeup.
Some people have more of it, some people have less of it.
Now, in the modern world, which is now so different from the world in which our ancestors lived, what we actually strive for, the goals we set up, are very different. The goal-seeking mechanisms in our brains were originally put there to try to achieve goals such as finding a herd of bison to hunt.
You have written that being an atheist allows you to become intellectually fulfilled.
No, I haven't quite written that. What I've written is that before Darwin it was difficult to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist, and that Darwin made it easy to become an intellectual. I mean, it's more. If you want to be an atheist, it would have been hard to be an atheist before Darwin came along. But once Darwin came along, the argument from design, which has always been to me the only powerful argument, even that isn't a very powerful argument, but I used to think it was, the only powerful argument for the existence of a creator. Darwin destroyed the argument from design, at least as far as biology is concerned, which has always been the happiest hunting ground for argument from design. Thereafter, whereas before Darwin came along, you could have been an atheist, but you'd have been a bit worried. After Darwin, you can be an intellectually fulfilled atheist. You can feel, really, now I understand how living things have acquired the illusion of design. I understand why they look as though they've been designed. Whereas before Darwin came along, you'd have said, well, I can see that the theory of a divine creator isn't a good theory, but I'm damned if I can think of a better one. After Darwin, you can think of a better one.
I mean, isn't the standard rebuttal to that God created Darwin and he could have created this whole evolutionary illusion that you were talking about, and well, I mean, getting back to first causes, yes, that you sort of...
Yeah. No, not that God created Darwin, but you mean God created the conditions in which evolution happened.
Yeah, and Darwin.
Well, ultimately Darwin. Yes, it's not a very satisfying explanation. It's a very unparsimonious, very uneconomical explanation. The beauty of the Darwinian explanation itself is that it's exceedingly powerful. It's a very simple principle, and using this one simple principle, you can bootstrap your way up from essentially nothing up to the world of complexity and diversity we have today. Now that's a powerful explanation.
It's not any simpler. In fact, it's more complex than the than Genesis. I mean, and God created the heavens and the earth.
You have to be joking.
Well, I mean, God created the heavens and the earth. I can say that pretty quickly.
You can say it, but
yeah.
think what lies behind it. What lies behind it is a complicated, intelligent being, God, who must have come from somewhere. You've simply smuggled in at the beginning of your book the very thing that we're trying to explain. What we're trying to explain is where organized complexity and intelligence came from. We have now got an explanation. You start from nothing and you work up gradually in easily explainable steps.
But then I can ask you the same question: where does the nothing come from? I mean, this is a. I mean, I don't want this to degenerate into a sophomore beer brawl. But I mean, you know, that is, isn't that the ultimate?
You can ask that. That's the ultimate question.
Right,
it's an important question. But all I would say to that is that it's a hell of a lot easier to say where nothing came from than it is to say where 30 million species of highly complicated organisms plus a super intelligent God came from, and that's the alternative.
Well, now, you wrote in the Selfish Gene this: living organisms had existed on Earth without ever knowing why for over 3,000 million years before the truth finally dawned on one of them. His name was Charles Darwin. That sounds to me like a religious statement. That is near messianic language, and you are making the case that these other people have this virus of the mind. That tonality says, "I found my God."
You can call it that if you like. It's not religious in any sense in which I would recognize the term. Certainly I look up to Charles Darwin. I would look up to anybody who had the insight that he did. But I wasn't really meaning to make a particularly messianic statement about Darwin. I was rather saying that not just Darwin, but this species, Homo sapiens, after all, the time that has elapsed between the origin of humanity and Darwin is negligible compared to the time that elapsed from the origin of life and the origin of humanity. And so let's modify that statement and make it a bit more universal and say life had been going on this planet for 3,000 million years without any animals knowing why they were there until the truth finally dawned upon Homo sapiens. It just happened to be Charles Darwin, could have been somebody else. Our species is unique. We are all members of a unique species which is privileged to understand for the first time in that 3,000 million year history why we are here.
I see. There was a study recently reported, I believe, in that great scientific journal, USA Today, but it's one that had a certain resonance with me and I think other people. It said that people who are religious live longer and healthier lives. And it seems to me, on its face, perhaps to you as well, that makes some sense. I mean, people who do have a firm belief system and don't worry about a whole lot of things are healthier. We've seen this in all the mind-body sorts of explorations that have been going on. But does that perhaps put a Darwinian bonus on believing in religion?
It could well do, yes. It's perfectly plausible to me. I've read the same study, and I think it might well be true. It could be analogous to the placebo effect. You know that many diseases, obviously they're cured by real medicines, even better. But nevertheless, if you give people a pill which doesn't contain anything medicinal at all, but the patient believes it does, then the patient gets better. For some diseases. Well. I suppose that religious belief could be one big placebo, and it could indeed have highly beneficial effects upon health, particularly where stress-related diseases are concerned.
So, if I want to advise my viewers, I could say, for example, what Professor Dawkins says is true but harmful. I would like you to believe something that's false and healthy.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it depends whether you value health or truth. Better, more.
Which would you value?
For myself, I would rather live a little bit less long and know the truth about why I live, rather than live a few It probably isn't very much longer, actually. Let's be very cautious.
Suppose it was substantially longer, and we were talking about your children rather than you.
Yeah, okay. I mean, these are fascinating hypothetical questions, and I suppose there would come a trade-off point. I mean, there'd probably come a point when. But I do think it's important, since this is a very academic discussion we're having. I think it would be positively irresponsible to let listeners to this program go away with the idea that this is a major effect, if it's an effect at all.